Um, Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots. Today we have a blue-eyed poster boy, and we also have Joe McKay. Joe, how are you doing, mate? You all
Going
right?
well, thanks, Neil. Love the intro. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah. So for the audience, Joe is an Australian LinkedIn ghostwriter who now lives in France, the lucky fucker. And he is here today to talk about LinkedIn. And the big question we're asking is LinkedIn trash in 2024? It's either is LinkedIn trash in 2024 or LinkedIn treasure trove or trash in 2024. Haven't decided on the exact title yet, but we'll come to that afterwards. Um,
Mm.
so, Joe, we'll come on to talk about your career in a few minutes, but I want to start with my trademark putting you on the spot question by exploring your life. So who is Joe McKay, the person, and what's your story?
It's a killer question to start with. It's a hard one to answer, and so I guess there's probably three things. There's three things I would say about myself. I've got a curious mind. I've got a real bias towards action, and I'm very resourceful. And a story that probably summarizes that and epitomizes me and my journey. In 2015, I was living in London. I was coming to the end of my 2-year visa as an Aussie. We all get a 2-year visa under age of 30, and I was coming to the end of that journey. Wasn't ready to go back home and kind of figure out what to do next with life. And I realized I kind of pulled out a map, like literally almost pulled out the map, and I was like, well, what's halfway home from London to Sydney? And I realized I'd never set foot on the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I've got no job to get to. I'm at a loose end. I didn't have any money, but I didn't have any commitments. So I thought there's an opportunity here to do something. And so the kind of resourceful side of me really kicked into gear. And I thought, well, what could I offer someone or a group of people in Africa? And I, at the time, was a qualified cricket coach, and I'd spent a summer playing cricket in Ireland as an overseas player and had done a lot of coaching around that. And the bias to action in me kind of sprung into life. And I thought, why don't I try and do that again? Why don't I try and find a cricket club somewhere in Africa that I can go and kind of stay with a family or figure out some accommodation and spend some time there? Because I didn't have money, to be honest, to do a holiday and travel around. But I thought if I can kind of make a pitch to get some accommodation sorted, get a roof over my head, then I can probably pay my own way for a few months. And so I just got into cold emailing as many cricket associations and clubs and groups as I could around kind of Southern Africa. Ended up in Windhoek, Namibia, the capital of Namibia, with an amazing family, the Van Zyl family, who put me up for a couple of months, and I coached the cricket team, and I actually ended up as the assistant coach to the Namibian national women's cricket team for about 2 months. And had an amazing time. Like, went on safari, did all that stuff, experienced the country like a local, and yeah, I think that's a story that kind of sums up, I guess, my resourcefulness and that bias to action and a very very curious mind.
Yeah, and what are some of the? Do you have any standout moments from your time, especially with the Namibian? It helps if I can say it. Cricket team. What do you kind of remember of that time? What are some of your fondest memories?
It was such a great time. Like I was 25 and the world was my oyster really. Like I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was just enjoying each day as it came. I think going on safari was very cool. We spent like 3 nights in Etosha National Park in Namibia, which is a little bit lesser known, but just saw some amazing stuff. And that was just like a self-drive safari. I just went with the family and they just kind of took us around. So that was kind of scary. Um, from the cricket point of view, there was a Tri-Series tournament, like a Tri-Nations tournament against Botswana and Lesotho, I think, or yeah, I can't remember. But look, we didn't have a great record. My coaching record wasn't great. I think we went 0 from 2 um, in that tournament. But I just loved it. Like I really enjoyed, and I always have enjoyed seeing young people enjoying sport and being active and trying to do their best. And it was just that, it doesn't matter where in the world you are or what resources you've got around you. That's kind of the beauty of sport, I guess, and something that can bring us all together. So just amazing memories and so much fun.
I'm finding some interesting parallels between coaching people in sport and doing what you do now with LinkedIn ghostwriting, in the sense that you're helping them reach a certain level of potential that they probably never thought was possible. And you're actually helping to uncover a certain element of their personality, because I think sometimes, sports people are their personalities as well, and you have to nurture that personality to get the most out of them, which I feel is an interesting parallel with what you do now with LinkedIn ghostwriting, and something we could come on to. But I just thought that was a really interesting detail there. It's in the sense of like helping people explore who they are a bit more. I think that applies to both disciplines.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I think especially at the time, the Namibian national women's team particularly wasn't very well known. Like the men's team had a little bit of success. I think they'd played in a World Cup, a one-day international World Cup at some point, but the women's team really wasn't on the map. And so, the players, you talk about the personalities there and things, it was almost a lack of confidence in a sense. There was some really talented athletes there, but they didn't have the confidence. And I think, yeah, in terms of a link across to what I do now, it is certainly something, that lack of confidence is something that holds a lot of people back, and is something that, having a partner, having someone who helps you really, really develops that confidence.
Self-perception is such a powerful thing, and there's that saying, isn't there, whether you think you can or can't do it, you're probably right. And I think that's why what you
100%.
do is so powerful and beneficial in lots of ways. And that kind of leads on to the next question, which is around your career. So obviously you work in marketing, but you've had a slightly unorthodox journey in that sense as well. I did a bit of research on you, and you were once the owner of an Australian social sports business. So can you expand a bit on that and explain how you got into marketing from there?
Yeah. So Dodgeball Sydney, again, it's resourcefulness, bias towards action, and a curious mind. And I was going through uni. I was part of a group of people that played social sport together, so touch football, mixed netball, all this kind of stuff. And at a certain point, we were just sick of the same old, same old. And dodgeball was a sport that was kind of the highlight of gym class in high school for a lot of, we used to just love it when we'd play dodgeball. And so I just jumped on. I thought, well, why don't we just join a dodgeball competition? And there wasn't one in Sydney, which just baffled me. And I knew I couldn't be the only one that would be interested in playing social dodgeball. So jumped into action, booked a facility kind of 8 weeks down the line, set up a one-page website, and did a bit of promotion on Facebook, and basically just took it from there. It ended up being, and still is, the biggest dodgeball community in Australia. They've kind of assembled a national team, men's and women's national team from there, and it's gone on leaps and bounds since I was involved. But it was again just that bias to action. I thought, why not give this a go? And then it was resourcefulness. So I roped in my sister. She was employee number 2. And for about 6-7 years there, we had an amazing time. We were playing as well, and refereeing, and just doing everything. And I guess that really was marketing, like the start of that. And what I've realized now, what made that successful was it was a community. So dodgeball was, we attracted traditional non-athletes, people who felt intimidated to go and join a touch football league or never played netball or whatever. And dodgeball is a very open sport. It's, we're all beginners at dodgeball. Like, there is no professional dodgeballs out there. So that barrier to entry was really low, and it attracted a certain type of person and became a community, and I didn't realize any of this at the time, and I hadn't studied marketing. I hadn't, done any research on this, but everyone today, is talking about build a community. And that's exactly what we did. And that's why it was so successful. I kind of just followed my nose and kept giving the people more of what they wanted at the time. But when I reflect on it now, it was community building 101, and still is to this day, and it's not for everyone, and it's and that's perfect, and that's why it works. And so that was a really practical kind of lesson in marketing that has taken a good 10 years to actually lodge in my brain. And I wish I could do it again.
Well, that's another interesting parallel, isn't it? Cultivating a community and going out of your comfort zone. Because on LinkedIn, you have to go out of your comfort zone. You have to put yourself out there. You can't be this kind of arrogant, aloof person anymore. It's not like school where you can just get by on aura. You've got to really put yourself out there and make an effort. And I suppose the examples you've just used there from your time in the dodgeball community are exactly the same. I was going to ask a really crass question. I'll ask it anyway. How much did it mirror the movie Dodgeball with Ben Stiller and
You know, everyone said that. Everyone, that movie came out in 2008. I think we started 2009, maybe 2010. And mate, to be perfectly honest, like, that was a huge driver of the business. Like it was pretty much exactly like that. It was we used softer ball, like foam balls, and we didn't have any wrenches or anything like that. But that was exactly it. Like it was chaos and a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. Well, we like a bit of fun chaos. Certainly, I do. So, what did LinkedIn look like when you first got into marketing? And I guess for the benefit of our younger viewers, how did it compare, or how does it compare to the LinkedIn that we see today?
So I've seen the big shift that I've seen on LinkedIn in the last 10 and probably even 15 years since I've had a LinkedIn account. LinkedIn used to be about impressing your audience. It used to be all about kind of your CV online and building up your achievements and your experience to be as impressive as possible. Now, LinkedIn in 2024 is very much about inviting your audience into your world, into experiencing a part of who you are. And that's a massive shift. And you see it in the way people communicate on LinkedIn. You see it in the way kind of the visual identity that people will often have on LinkedIn as well. And it's a huge shift from this idea of trying to be as impressive as possible and big yourself up as much as you can to being a space that's designed to be more inviting. And I look at you know more people than ever are like university qualified, for example. So, whereas that used to be a thing that would set you apart, that kind of, for our generation, is not really a factor. Everyone's got the university degree, basically. So how can you differentiate yourself beyond just having more achievements and more impressive stuff to talk about? And so that's where it's much more now around inviting people into your world and sharing a little bit more of yourself.
Yeah, being more of a real person rather than a resume.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. I remember when I got LinkedIn in 2014 or 15, everyone was really like they were straight laced. They were a really straight laced version of themselves. And I did sometimes come away thinking, who are these people really? Like I don't want to reference this again because I feel like I reference it on every podcast, but there's that episode of, the clip from the movie Anger Management with Jack Nicholson and Adam Sandler, where he gets Adam Sandler goes to the anger management class, and Jack Nicholson's like, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Well, I'm an insurance, I'm an executive at an insurance company," and blah blah blah. And he reads, he like almost like reads from a resume the way he's talking about himself, and Jack Nicholson's like, "No, who are you really? Like, I want to know who you are as a person,
Mm.
not just the fucking line of work you're in or the companies you've worked for." And that was what LinkedIn was like. And it was even down to like the language you use on LinkedIn. So I remember some of the posts I would put out would have to be like, paragraphs and paragraphs of information because I had to be really careful. My employers would see it. So I couldn't put anything out that wasn't, middle of the road. Like it had to be
Mm.
really professional, above board, and it was kind of soul destroying to be honest. Like I
Yeah.
really enjoyed letting my personality come out over the last few years, and look, it's not for everyone, but it's worked for me, and that's all I can say really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's where LinkedIn started. It was very much your CV online, um, and connecting with your professional network and kind of a bit of a job board. Whereas now it's so much more than that. And the more you can be inviting rather
Mm.
than impressive through your presence on LinkedIn, the more success you're going to have in 2024 and beyond.
So what got you into LinkedIn ghostwriting in the first place? How did that journey really start for you, and what do you kind of remember of the early days, and maybe some of the challenges you had as well? I'd be quite interested to know about that. But if we just go with the first question for now, what was your first foray into LinkedIn ghostwriting?
So 2022, I quit the day job and we moved to France to have our second child, our son. So my wife's French, and so she wanted to have the baby here in France, surrounded by her family. And so I'd left my day job to try and figure out. I had kind of a freelance project in marketing lined up, B2B marketing lined up, and then beyond that, it was like, well, what comes next? And so in this period of about 6 months where I was unemployed and in between nappies and bottles and things, I was really I was having all these thoughts, like the brain never turned off, this bias to action. It's almost hyperactivity. And I was having all these thoughts, and I started to write them down. And then I started to post some of them on LinkedIn, and some of them started to get a bit of interest, and I was getting really interesting positive feedback from people that I respected in my network. And then kind of stumbled across people like Justin Welsh and Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush and a few other kind of, solopreneurs, I guess. At the time, this is in mid 2022, and just was working on my writing skill. Really, like writing has always been a part of my life, something that I've enjoyed doing, and so I just started to commit to working on that. And at a certain point, just thought, well, what if I could try and monetize this in some way? So I picked up the phone to an old boss in management consulting, a director of a management consulting firm, and just offered to write 10 posts for him for $500, I think it was. That was the start. He said absolutely. Got off and did that, and really that gave me an early signal that there might be something in this. This is late 2022, and so by January kind of 2023, I was then building this side hustle, marketing myself through LinkedIn, continuing to write and post regularly, leaning on my in-person, like my real life network as well, to try and figure out just little pilots, little projects I could do like that, and kind of built from there. I think that the advantage I had, the thing that I had going for me, was because it was a side hustle. Like I through the intervening months of 2022, I realized I was going to have to actually take a real day job and pay the bills. So I'd lined up a job in B2B SaaS marketing. And so because this was a side hustle, like I was spending my evenings and weekends, with two young kids, I just priced myself and my services, I think what would be appropriately, but what felt quite high at the time, and that was the value of my time. And so I think a lot of people starting out, what I've noticed is they seem to get stuck in this cycle of, like, you really want to make it work. So you cut prices, you try and offer to do more for less. And it just gets harder and harder. And it's kind of this race to the bottom. Whereas for me, the advantage of having a day job and trying to build this as a side hustle on the side was like, that's the value of my spare time. And it was then about adjusting and reaching the right audience, the right clients that were willing to kind of pay that amount. So that was very much the start, and here we are.
Brilliant. I mean, what I love about your story and where it goes a little bit against the grain is that you were aware or acutely aware of your value from the beginning. And that's not to say that other people who don't charge accordingly are not necessarily aware of their value, but you were confident enough in your value to attract the kinds of clients that were going to be perfect for you in the long run, that were going to be better suited to your goals and needs. Like so many people, as you said there, just take the money in the beginning. Like they'll charge really low rates, like a lot lower than the rates you just quoted there. And I can understand the trepidation you may have felt at the time, but look, it's paid off. It's literally and figuratively paid off for you.
Well, and I think the thing with that is confidence is a function of the number of options you've got, and so because, again, like, because I had that day job, I had something that was paying the bills, I had a safety net, I had options. And it was a patient build. Like, I spent all of 2023 working the day job, building the side hustle on evenings and weekends. And when I got to a point where I'd kind of replaced, or I was making about 80% of my salary through the side hustle, then I decided it was, that's enough of a proof point. It's time to lean into this a bit more.
That's a pretty incredible ratio. I'm not sure how many people have ever got 80% through the side hustle, but that's pretty damn good. Like that's pretty incredible. And you must have really done a lot of work in the beginning to get to that stage.
It was hard. Look, it was hard work. Like, there was a lot of hours of work going into it. But I think as well, like, my resourcefulness, and to be honest, probably the fourth thing I would add about myself is I'm lazy. So I'll always, and I think it was Bill Gates said he'll always hire a lazy person to do a hard job because they'll find the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
And so I was just always looking for ways that I could um, not take shortcuts at all in terms of the work I was doing, but how could I maximize the value of what I was doing? So the big one for me was testimonials and case studies.
Mhm.
Get proof points of the value delivering, because delivering the work becomes part of your marketing engine. You know what I mean? So I was doing the work, I was getting testimonials and feedback from clients, and that was fueling my marketing, which was fueling sales. And then I'm kind of delivering. So kind of just trying to kill multiple birds with one stone in everything you're doing. Like as a solopreneur, whether you're a writer or whatever you're doing, like as a solopreneur, the more you can multitask or get multiple streams of value out of one thing, the better off you'll be.
I like the idea of being selectively lazy, but in a good way. Like
Yeah.
you can spend your whole life, as we say in England. I don't know if they say this in Australia, but you can spend your whole life faffing around and not getting anything done, or you
Yeah.
can just get it done. Just do it. Like I'm with you on the rates thing. Like when I first started out, I would charge rates that were conducive to just getting the work. And even now, sometimes there's been clients I've worked with very recently where I'm like, oh God, I undercharged them. But now I just think, but then the more people have started to pay my new rates, the more I just think, no, fuck it, that's my new rate now. If you don't want to pay it, I know that someone else will because they have. Like and
Mm.
it's having that confidence and just confidence and going for it. Um, we're going to come on to explore the ins and outs of how to use LinkedIn a little bit later. But before we get to that point, can you just provide a general overview of your process when you're working with clients on their LinkedIn strategy and well, we'll start with that question, then we can maybe come on to talk about your ideal clients. But first of all, if we talk about the LinkedIn strategy, what does that look like and how do you implement it for your clients?
Yeah. So look, I think any content strategy really starts with the audience. How laser focused can we get on your target audience? So
Yeah.
when we kick off, I'm trying to figure out ideally like what's an audience of one, like a one person audience that we can write to, that I can write to. Most clients feel like they've got a handle on this, but as we kind of peel back the layers and I can ask more and more questions, it is quite rare that people have got a super clear handle on that. And kind of if in doubt, like if anyone's out there trying to figure out, who's that audience of one I should be writing to, I always ask a client to think about their best client, the client for them that was the easiest to work with, that paid on time, you delivered good results, and almost reverse engineer back from there. Like what about them made them a good client, and then almost like literally write to them in your content. So we figure out audience. Obviously, depending on the service that the client is offering or whatever they're selling, we need to figure out what are the content topics and themes we want to talk about around that. And there again, that always downstream from the audience, because we want to be talking to the pain points, the challenges, the problems that audience is facing, and how what you do transforms them away from those problems. So it's, it can sometimes feel a bit morbid, but, just picking away at those scabs, those pain points that your ideal client has, and then kind of using that to figure out the content strategy. From there, it's either a fortnightly or a monthly chat, content interview, really. There's some LinkedIn coaching around that as well. And then I just get my head down and supply anything from 2 to 4 posts per week, all done, formatted, set up ready for the client either to copy paste and schedule in themselves, or some clients will share their login details and I actually manage all the scheduling and posting on their behalf as well.
That's great. I love this idea of the one person audience because so many people don't think about that. That's really key to just imagine them sat across the table from you. And I don't think
Yeah.
I don't do it enough really with my LinkedIn content, and I don't think people generally do give it an awful lot of consideration, but it's so important. Whilst you want to convey your personality and be true to who you are, you don't want to go too off piste as well. You do want to follow a certain pathway and have a certain individual in mind. So I think that what you said there is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, well, and I think if you write to an audience of one, you actually quite quickly realize that there is a lot more than one of those people out there.
Mm. Yeah, I love
And
that.
they're the people that will be your ideal clients, and they will get the value, and they will get you, and they'll pay.
I'm interested.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, no.
Sorry. All I was going to ask was when you're putting this together, how much of the content do you position around targeting that person's ideal client, and how much of it is about showcasing them, the individual, or does it really just vary on depending on the individual? Like how does that split typically work?
Yeah. So super simplistically, I think about three types of posts on LinkedIn. The first post is designed to drive awareness, reach kind of as many people as possible that fit roughly your demographic and your audience. And so that's usually going to be a personal story, something, an anecdote from your life, or a business story, the founder journey. That's going to be very much kind of me orientated, and something around, the client and their journey. And that's the goal of that purely is kind of likes and engage, like reach, how get yourself and your brand in front of as many people as possible. The next type of post is much more around trying to build trust with that target audience, demonstrating that you know what you're talking about and that you can solve their problems. And so that's, here's how I type content. Here's how to do X, Y, Z. Here's a look at my process for ABC. So you're starting to get a little bit more tightly focused on that, the specific pain points and problems of your audience of one. And then the third type of post is the sales kind of post, making an offer. Make an offer for that ideal customer, that audience of one, to put up their hand and start working with you. And that's usually going to be supported by a case study or a testimonial, proof that you've delivered a transformation before. And then a super clear call to action, like literally send me a DM with info for more info on my program. And that you kind of do that 10% of the time. And that's your, I guess, an overarching content strategy that should work across awareness, trust, and then making an offer.
Yeah. Because people can really overcomplicate that, can't they? And when you've broken it down like that, and I'm not trying to discredit your line of work at all, because I know it's not easy, but it seems quite easy the way you've explained it, and that's a testament to, I suppose, how good you are at what you do. That it's very your process is very streamlined, and you don't need to overcomplicate things or reinvent the wheel. As long as you are consistent with it and you have that strategy, then you in the long run you can't fail really. I think
Well, and I
that's
think the cool thing there is, like, you think about the first type of post, like an awareness building post. Now you can experiment with so many different ways to do that. It might be the story of how you started your business. It might be the story about being the assistant national team cricket coach in 2015. Like, it could be a joke, it could be, a meme, like whatever it is, but you can kind of have some fun in and around each of those kind of stages. So there's a mix there between a structure, but also some freedom to showcase some of yourself and your personality.
yeah, amazing. And I think based on what you've said so far, I think we know what an ideal client looks like for you. I mean, would I be right in saying it's business owners looking to stand out on LinkedIn? I don't know if you've got any sort of specific demographics of people you look for, any industries, or does it really kind of vary?
Yeah, look, so I'm doing some work on this right now myself. I kind of have two buckets, but probably the predominant one, the focus that I'm leaning into at the moment is really around solopreneurs, and solopreneurs who maybe have built some level of traction or a signal that they've got some value to add. So there might be an income level associated with that. They might have been able to sign a few clients and deliver some projects, but they've really up until now relied on their personal network, and some kind of low level referrals, where they're trying to actually go beyond that and use LinkedIn to reach a new audience. So I'm working a lot with solopreneurs at the moment, and I enjoy that because every founder story is so different. Every journey to becoming a solopreneur is so different. There's such a wealth of content in there. But I would say as well, like what I'm trying to shift away from is I'm trying to shift myself up the market a little bit. So, like we were talking about before, like my services aren't cheap. So you kind of need to be at a certain level of stability and kind of income for yourself in your own business for this to be worthwhile. And I think that's the balance I'm trying to strike right now, is talking to an audience that sees the value and is able to afford the investment, but doesn't already have help, if that makes sense, or they haven't already mastered how to do this themselves. So
I think
it's a fine balance for me.
it's very important to be clear on that as well, because you will come up against this, and I've had this before with my own services where some people just genuinely don't need it that much, but that's kind of their own specific situation. Like, it's better to go for the people who have that more urgent need. and also people who are a very specific type of client, as you say, because you don't want to be approaching people who have got, £100 to spend on LinkedIn posts
Yeah.
or $100, like, because I guess if you go for some of the higher ticket clients, and I don't like to categorize clients in this way, but it's just like a generally accepted term, some of the higher ticket clients, then that a sale to them could be worth five figures in profit, depending on the type of industry they're in. That's something I've asked people before. And yes, it does influence the price. Like I'm very open about that in that, if people say to me, what's the price? I can give them a price. Most of the time I can give you an average price for my services if I'm writing copy for a website, or I do a little bit of LinkedIn myself, but mostly for company pages, not so much the personal side like you do. But if people ask me for a price, generally I can give them a ballpark range. But if it's a massive company asking me that, then the conversation is going to be completely different, because I know that a handful of LinkedIn posts for that company is going to be worth a lot more than it is to someone else. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a large conglomerate comprising, many employees, as you've just alluded to there. There are solopreneurs out there who are making an absolute killing, right? But
Yeah.
like that, but that a sale is going to be worth quite a lot to them, and so you charge accordingly. I think that's something that a lot of people don't master until probably 1 or 2 years in business, at least. Like that is one of the most powerful things you can ask someone: how much is a sale worth to you? Because if you know that, then you have a really powerful tool in your arsenal there.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And I've always, I'm not a sales expert, but I've, being in this game means you have to learn pretty fast as well. And, one of the key things for me is always separating price from value. And one of those questions you can ask to uncover the value for a customer is, yeah, what is your average client project worth? Or, what is a sale worth to you on average? It's all starting to shift away from the price of your service into the value that you deliver for that client. And that's what's going to help you move away from conversations about dollars and cents and kind of X amount per post or whatever it is, into the value that you're going to deliver. So yeah, really good advice.
yeah. So let's start with the positive aspects of LinkedIn then. So I know that the title
Yeah.
of probably doesn't lend itself so much to the positives, but we are going to talk about the positives because there are
Yeah.
a few. What, in your opinion, makes LinkedIn a force for good?
Look, I wouldn't be doing this job. I wouldn't be living in France. I wouldn't be working for myself if LinkedIn didn't exist, to be honest. I followed some of those big creators and influencers who can be quite divisive, I guess, now, and there's a lot of opinion that's separating. But the reality is, like, they showed me a possibility that I didn't really know existed. I reckon through following the right people on LinkedIn, you can study a master's in marketing and advertising. I genuinely believe that you can get almost unlimited value from the right thought leaders' content on LinkedIn, compared to, say, I spent 50,000 on a university degree, versus what I kind of can get out of, a really curated list of thought leaders on LinkedIn. I think that's incredible value there. And I've met some amazing people. Like I've been able to chat to really interesting people, do some cool collaborations, and then, yeah, meet people I never would have met otherwise through LinkedIn. So I think they're the key positives for me. What do you reckon?
You're the first person to ask me a question on a podcast, so now I'm like a bit flustered and don't know what to say. But the sense of community, um, the sense of community, because I can talk to people who are. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of people in Australia, this year already. In fact, I had one on the podcast. I speak to people in America. I speak to people in Asia, all around Europe. Like it just brings you all together when you're thousands of miles apart. And actually, the crazy thing is that although you're not close in proximity, you feel, and this sounds like a little bit of a cliche line, but you feel close to them emotionally and spiritually. You just feel so, you know, you feel like you're one. There's that kinship and that collaboration that I absolutely love about LinkedIn that you just don't get in day-to-day life. And people probably show certain sides to themselves on LinkedIn that they probably don't show in real life. Like there's certain things that I will talk about on LinkedIn that I wouldn't even talk about with my friends or family. That's not to say that if they were to come on my LinkedIn, they could find that out. It's not like it's a big secret, but there's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's certain sides to myself that I feel more comfortable expressing on LinkedIn. Because I don't know about you, but I've got some buddies who are like, oh, fucking LinkedIn. Oh, look at Mr. Big Shot here with his 3,000 LinkedIn followers. I had to get that in there because I just got 3,000 this week. But, you know, like, you know, people are very cynical about LinkedIn. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to come on to the reasons why they're right to be. But I think if we focus on the positives, that is definitely one, that sense of yeah, just being around like-minded people, even if you're millions of miles apart or thousands of miles apart, you feel like
Yeah.
you're sat next to them working away and having a conversation, a bit like we are now. I'd say that's the most powerful aspect of it for me. And I never thought I could, I mean, not just get the clients I've got from LinkedIn, because I have managed to get 2 or 3 clients recently from my LinkedIn activity, which is just worth its weight in gold. Like, it's invaluable to me. I don't even want to put a number on it because it's great that people are validating my thoughts and opinions in
Mm.
that way. But like I say, it's bigger than that. It's a real, again, not to sound cliche, but it is a proper community of like-minded people if you look in the right places, as you said before.
Yeah, you've got to look in the right places. You've got to be ruthless with the unfollow button. And I don't know the last time I have never been a Twitter user, but that just seems to be getting worse and worse. Insta is really not my thing. Like, I think when you compare what else is out there from a social media point of view, LinkedIn is probably the best of the lot.
Yeah. I mean, definitely with X, not a platform I want to use anymore. I haven't used it for about a year or two. Obviously, you know, Elon Musk is his own guy, and he's got his own way of doing things. But I just think the lack of censorship on that platform is quite terrifying. The spread of misinformation, and that happens on LinkedIn as well. But with X, it's like another level. It's really
Mm.
spooky. I mean, you see it on TikTok as well. I'm glad I don't use TikTok. I'm glad that we are the kind of ages that we are. You know, being in our, I guess you could say, mid 30s now, which is a little bit depressing, but also we're not so much that TikTok generation. And thank God, really, because every time I go on there, I just see more and more toxic, awful comments. I see it on LinkedIn, by the way, again, but nothing like you see on X or TikTok or even Facebook. Sometimes you just think, wow, this is like, who are these people?
Well, and I think that sense of community you talk about there that comes from LinkedIn, I think that's part of the fact that it is a professional network at its base. So your career profile is on there. You know, your most people have their photo on there, your full name, where you work. Unless you go in and fake all that stuff, which I think they've got some pretty good protocols to stop people from doing
Yeah.
that. That it means you've got to put a real face on rather than being an anonymous keyboard warrior.
Well,
I
I
think
have
that's a
noticed,
big part of it.
one thing I have noticed, in fact, this segues into the next question, which is obviously around the negative aspects of LinkedIn. But one thing I've noticed is that some of the bravest people on LinkedIn, interestingly, are the ones without photographs of themselves. They have their names on there sometimes, or they have like initials, but then it's always the ones without photos who tend to be the biggest
It's
trolls.
always the way.
Yeah,
It's always the way, isn't it?
let's just go into that question then. I mean, like, I don't want to go to town on LinkedIn because we both use it. We met on LinkedIn. I've had a lot of joy from LinkedIn, and I think it's a great platform, but we can't shy away from the fact that there are a lot of negative aspects to it. So, what would you say from your own personal experience as some of the most negative aspects of the platform?
So I think of LinkedIn as, and I've experienced this firsthand, I think of LinkedIn as the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. Incredibly powerful, can help you do anything, but it will control you if you let it. You spend too much time on there, and it will kind of take over your life. And I've had phases where this has happened to me. It's addictive phenomenon, especially when you're running a business on social media.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there's that aspect to it. Hopefully, you didn't lose too much of that
No, I was
graph.
going to say, your insights were that good. You floored Zoom. Zoom doesn't know what to do. It's just flabbergasted by how good your insights were that it had to cut you off. But yeah, I got the gist of it anyway. The One Ring from Lord of the Rings, and it was a great analogy, by the way. But it will control you, and I think we have to really, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess you just have to manage what information you process from LinkedIn and who you listen to, because look, I've been there. I have once spent an hour, maybe 2 hours, reading through the LinkedIn feed and reading from people who just seem to want to make you feel like shit about yourself and just want to tell you what you're doing wrong. And I've come away thinking, oh my God, I don't have a proper business. I'm going to go under tomorrow. Like, no one's going to want to invest in me. I'm not getting this right. I don't have a strategy. I don't have a voice. And a lot of the time, it's just bullshit. And I'm bored of these people. I don't know what they get out of it. Obviously, there's some kind of. I always think with anyone who says harsh things about you, I've actually got something sellotaped on my wall, something that someone once said to me about my business. And I don't know what these people get out of saying these things. Like, I don't know
Mm.
whether there's some kind of like void they have in their life, but you just have to recognize that and ignore it because you see it all the time. Like when you know all the things you're doing wrong. Like some people, you talk about templates. Well, I shouldn't say templates, but you know, you talked about the structure that you will follow when
Yep.
you write posts for
Yep.
people. And I see people go down this road again and again, and it is like a structured post, but it's all this
Yep.
usual stuff. You're doing it all wrong, and here's why. Here are 5 things you're getting wrong. It's like fuck off. You don't
Yep.
fucking know me, okay? Like, how can you
Mm.
say 5 things that I'm doing wrong? You know, sometimes when people write that, it's like they're writing that about themselves. And I just wish they'd be more open and honest about it because, like, if they were, people would respect them a bit more. If they said, here are 5 mistakes I made, and you reframe that, and then it comes from
Yep.
that kind of perspective where it looks like you're looking out for people, then people would get on board with it. But you see the posts that are like, um, here's why your content sucks. I hate that. Like, you know, here's why blogging is dead. Here's why SEO is dead. Just fuck off. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, what do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think so. My kind of second factor that is a downside to LinkedIn is the most prolific people on LinkedIn are trying to sell you something. You know, and I say that as someone who is prolific on LinkedIn and who has something for sale as well. So, you know, I'm part of the game. But I think when you realize that, and when then you realize that we are programmed to be much more responsive to, we're much more loss averse. You know, we are programmed to be driven by fear of loss. That's a sales technique. It's a sales tactic that people are using in their content, and it's designed to make you feel inferior, to buy my thing that'll get you out of that problem. And I think so. Someone like Justin Welsh I mentioned there was kind of inspiration for me. Then you realize it almost feels like a multi-level marketing campaign because he's selling me that dream life, and then he's got a course for $150 that I can go and buy
Yeah.
to build my own pyramid just like him. And it kind of fuels that cycle. So I think there's a little bit of that there, you know, and you do just have to go in aware that most people that are most prolific are they have something for sale. And that, you know, a really successful way to sell stuff is through pain point marketing and really agitating problems. And I think people definitely can take it too far. So that would probably be my kind of second watch out for LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think because sometimes what will happen is, and this has happened with a few big creators that I follow, you'll watch a YouTube video that they've put together and you'll agree with pretty much everything they say, but then the next day they'll put out a LinkedIn post and you're like, come on, man. Like, you know, you've just let me down there. Like I was on your side and then you had to go and put out this generic, stupid post about, you know, things that people get wrong and how you're never going to scale to a 7-figure business unless you do A, B, and C. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know whether they deliberately say one thing and do another so that they always stay front of mind. I mean, I don't know if they're that cunning, but I wouldn't rule it out these days.
Well,
Yeah.
mate, and also, and this is where I say you've got to be ruthless with the unfollow, you know. And so, whoever said I wanted to build a 7-figure business, and if that's kind of what their game is about, then move on. You know, you gotta remove yourself from those situations, I guess.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing, especially for, and I actually wrote about this today, but especially for the solopreneurs and for the creative types out there, this idea of revenue kind of being a definition of success, you know, and the 10K month or the 20K month, that for me is just a really arbitrary, and I've reflected on my own journey up till now, and I've realized there's no correlation for me between, there's almost an inverse correlation sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
between how creatively fulfilled and happy and rewarded I feel versus income. Um, and so I think there is this sense of trying to boil everything down to a number or a 5-step framework or a, you know, hit this revenue goal. Like I think everything with attention spans and just the way the platform is, a lot of stuff is trying to be distilled down into something that's way too simple.
I think with income, I've found that the more I've started to earn, the more I've felt like I didn't have before. So I've started to get quite scared and almost think, And then you start to think, I've got more to lose now. Like, if I
Yeah.
lost all my clients now versus if I lost all my clients at the start of my journey, that's worth quite a lot more.
Mm.
But like, that's where you just kind of have to detach from it and think this is all a bit of a game. And I don't like to say it that way, but if you kind of say that in your mind, it takes a little bit of the pressure off. And to be honest, when you asked me what's my favorite part of LinkedIn, I instinctively said the community and the people. I didn't say more money, although that is a
Yeah.
byproduct of engaging with the community. The things that it's like the movie The Big Short with Christian Bale, where he plays Mark Bauman. He talks about the important things in life, the idea of friendship and family. And he said, I can't remember the gist of it, but I think he says something like, money sucks all that out of you, like, and
Mm.
too much of it can really make you forget what's important. You know.
Yeah, and look, and we were talking before we hit record on this. I've gotten to that point a little bit where, like, I did this to, as I said, move over to France, spend more time with family, and kind of being more present and have some more freedom and flexibility. But I think that the double-edged sword of solopreneurship, of going out on your own, is that you can feel like it's all on your shoulders and you've got everything to lose, and it's arguably harder to be present when your business kind of never sleeps. If you have a day job, you shut down the computer, close the door, and kind of live your life. And I think that's that fine balance as well for those of us that are trying to make a living on our own. Um, you might have freedom from a location point of view and from a time point of view, and I don't have pointless meetings anymore, which is
Yeah.
all great stuff. I don't commute anymore, but I do have nights where I'm tossing and turning in bed because I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z in my business. Yeah, it's just that balance, and nothing's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Nothing's perfect. And if you see anything that's less than perfect, as you say, you can be ruthless with the unfollow button. I think as well, when you read things on the feed, if you start to feel like you're getting into your own thoughts too much, you have to ask yourself, are they saying these things to you or are you saying these things to you? So you might be reading the words on the screen that someone has put together and it might be stressing you out. But really, after about the first 10 to 15 seconds of reading it, once you've stopped reading it, are they really saying it to you or are you saying it to you? Like, that's not letting them off the
Mm.
hook because they've wrote a fucking stupid post. But, you then have to think, well, how much power are you going to give this person? You don't know this person. Like, we give a lot of power to people who we don't know. Like, I might look at it and go,
Absolutely.
oh, Justin Welsh has put out something saying that I suck and that I don't have a business because of X, Y, and Z. But A, I don't know how successful he is beyond just numbers that I see on a screen. Like, it could mean absolutely nothing for all I know. And B, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know who I
Yeah.
am. He doesn't know my name. So why put so much power behind these things? It's all quite superficial, really, when you
Mm.
break it down.
Well, and it's also interesting for us, as two writers, I guess, like, because we do know the power of words to shape people's opinions and their thoughts. It's again, it's that One Ring thing. It's a very powerful tool. But just, I guess, be careful with it. Use it for good.
And say you're giving the game away here. You're telling people what we do, paid agitate solutions, all that, but we mean it sincerely to anyone who's watching. But yeah, how do you see LinkedIn evolving in the next, say, 5 or 10 years? I mean, this feels like kind of a almost impossible question to ask, which begs the question, why did I ask it? But like when you think about how much it's changed in the last 5 or 10 years, I mean, what could you see really happening from here, and how do you see it changing?
There's three things. One of them's already here, and that's video. The LinkedIn video feed is starting to show up. I think that'll only become more prominent, and it might even move to be like a video first platform. I'm not sure about that. I think the second thing is, and this again has already started to happen, but we're going to see a lot more influencer marketing, real, genuine B2B influencer marketing content. So you see it in different pockets at small scale, but I think that's only going to continue. And then the third thing, I think the stat that gets thrown around now is, 99% of people don't post on LinkedIn. I think that number is going to drop rapidly. I think that number already is much lower in reality than that. And I think we're going to see a lot more people realizing that their personal brand, and LinkedIn as of right now for professionals, in my opinion, is the strongest, most effective channel for building your personal brand and reputation as a professional. I think we're only going to see more and more people dive into that space and be very conscious about their personal brand on LinkedIn. And so I think that 99% number, we're going to see a lot more content. We're going to see a lot more curation and thought that goes into how people show up on LinkedIn than we have before.
It's
What do you see happening?
Well, yeah, I definitely think you're right with the 99% stat dropping drastically. I just look at some people's profiles and think, why are you even on LinkedIn if you hardly use it? Like, there's some profiles I'll go on and they haven't posted a single thing. It's like, what are you doing, you creep? Like, stop observing from afar.
Yeah.
I think that we might, I don't know. I almost sometimes feel like the platform has got a little bit too much like Facebook because of people like me, who post very to the point, personal anecdotes. Maybe we're going to get back to a little bit more of the work related stuff. I don't know. I don't know. Having said that, I think the world's come too far for that, and it's for the better, in my opinion. I think it is a more kind of democratic place, which is always good. But yeah, I would say I can't really add much to what you've said there. I don't I feel like I know an awful lot about LinkedIn, except that I just, post whatever I think, and some people find it funny. Like the video thing is really good for me because, when I first joined LinkedIn, I was just a face and a few words. I really didn't like videoing myself. I didn't like the sound of my own voice, which I know will come as a huge shock to people. I like the sound of my own voice in everyday life, but not on video. But then, I just had a bit of an epiphany in early 2023, and I thought, fuck it, like let's just go for it. Why not? What have I got to lose by being my personality, by showcasing my personality and being myself? Because, my friends, they might say differently, but they like me for the way I am, and my family and stuff. So I thought, well, just put it out there, be yourself. So I have really enjoyed embracing that and
Yeah.
showing my services through not just like my personality, but my services through video as well with this podcast. Like, never even thought I'd set up a podcast. I think you probably will get a few more podcasters on LinkedIn because it feels like everyone and anyone's an expert now. And I don't have a problem with that. Dip your toe in the water. If people want to be like, if people want to be ultra critical and go, oh, look at you, you're cool doing a podcast, let them be bitter and cynical. That's fine. I don't
Yeah.
really care. That's their sad life. But yeah, you're going to see more podcasters, I think, for sure, doing like what we're doing. And utilizing that new feature. And yeah, I can't really add anything to what you've said there. I think we have already come quite a long way, when it's things like opening up about mental health. Like that feels like that never would have happened 10 years ago, where I
Mm.
see people who are in floods of tears, or they've done a video at like, saying that I've had a really tough week. I've not been in a good place and it's because of X, Y, and Z. And my clients just left me and all this. Like 10 years ago, you never would have seen that.
Mm.
I hope that continues to happen. And I think maybe with video, we will see that a little bit more. Um, Influencer marketing was not one I was aware of, I'll be honest. So you're one step ahead of me on that one. I would never have really thought about that. Although I suppose I am doing a bit of LinkedIn writing for B2B companies. I would never have thought they use influencers, but that just shows how behind I must be, because if that's happening, then I think that's awesome. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you'll start to see product placement on some of the big creators' posts. I think fair play. I think it makes a lot of sense for B2B products and B2B businesses. So that's only going to continue. I don't know when they'll do the whole, hashtag spawn, or like whether you're going to have to actually reference these paid partnerships, but it's certainly one to watch because it's happening fast.
yeah, no, it's good. So who are your favorite creators on LinkedIn? Have you got a list of like favorite creators, and like just people who you take inspiration from on a
Yeah, so Dave Harland, who I think is a fellow Scouser,
yeah.
he's a funny guy. Like he's one who just relentlessly is just dripping with sarcasm, day in and day out. I like his stuff. I get a good laugh out of that. Um, Hannah Shamji, who's probably a much smaller creator, but is a customer research expert. So all around getting insights from customers when you interview them. Super interesting for me in what I do, and just has there's the clickbait worthy, there's the stuff that the content that really gets eyeballs and goes viral, and then there's the real expertise, and she always delves deeper and teaches you something more. So I really like her. There's too many to kind of name. I think they're often little niche, kind of smaller creators that are just experts in what they do, and they're almost bucking the trend of like formatting and crisping everything up and making everything look perfect and just really sharing what they know. I think I always appreciate a little bit of that raw, unpolished expertise.
Yeah, I like that. And just an important caveat to add to that, although I live in Liverpool, I'm not a Scouser originally because I know if Dave,
Ah,
he probably won't watch this, but Dave, if you're watching, I have got a purple bin actually, which is they always say the colour of your bin signifies whether you're a true Scouser or not, and my bin is purple, which is the Liverpool City region. So I always say that, but yeah,
ah,
kind of moved all over. But yeah, whenever I like sometimes I ring friends from home and they'll say, "Oh, from where I used to live," and they'll go, "Oh, you've got a Scouse accent now." But if I said that to people around here, they'd be like, "No way, like
no, you
not."
don't.
At least you can understand me. Then some of the true native Scousers are not so easy to understand. But yeah, he's really funny, Dave. I mean, yeah, obviously, I think a lot of people know about his stuff. Haven't followed Hannah's stuff before, so I'll definitely check her out. I mean, I'm with you on that. In that some of the smaller creators like you just don't kind of not you don't expect to come across them or to find them funny, but like when you go on their profile, you go, wow, like how I don't know about you, but sometimes I go on people's profiles, like people within my network, and I just ask myself, how does this person not have six-figure followers? Like, how do they not have tens or hundreds of thousands? They're fucking brilliant. Like everything they put out
Mm,
is great. So that happens quite a lot. But listen, I want them to be undiscovered. You know what I mean? So I can have that
yeah.
kind of relationship with them because you do sometimes worry about people getting a little bit big for their boots, and it's always nice when you see ones who are a little bit more. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? A little
Down
bit
to
more,
earth.
I guess. Yeah, unearthed. Yeah,
Yeah,
hidden
yeah.
gems.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that is the beauty of LinkedIn. There is that kind of the big crowd, and then there's often see those trends kind of trickling down into the smaller creators. But I think more the merrier. It's great to see more creators coming onto the platform, more people wanting to show up and start writing and sharing their ideas. I think more power to anyone who wants to do that. And if you need help with it, then give me a call.
Then hit you up. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, on that, it's like you've been reading my questions here because that was my last question. So, where can people find you if they want to connect and ask you questions on any of the stuff we talked about?
Yeah, so look, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. So find me, Joe McKay, and I'll share my details so you can drop them in the show notes. I've also recently started a weekly newsletter or a gazette. I'm calling it a gazette because the world doesn't need another email newsletter.
Yeah.
It's called The Thought Follower. You can subscribe to that and get kind of my bit more long form, bit more not necessarily more personal, but I'm more free flowing in the way that I approach that and the stories and kind of insights I share. It's a little bit less structured. So I'm growing that at the moment and sharing my best stuff there. So grab me on LinkedIn and then you'll see a link to join my newsletter and we can drop that maybe in the show notes as well. But I'm actually scared to admit or even think about how much time I've spent on LinkedIn over the last 2 years. It's a little bit of a worry.
Well, it's paying off for you. It's absolutely paying off. You might have frozen on screen, but you haven't frozen in life. That's for sure. I was trying to think of a way to weave frozen in. That was the best I could do. But I will try
Thank you, mate.
I'll try and think of a better in the aftermath when I come to post this on LinkedIn, ironically enough. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Joe. I love that, and I'll put all the links in the description so people can find out more about you. And yeah, hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Nice one. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate the chat.